Okay. Okay. See. All right. Okay, let's get started. B'Shem Hashem Na'aseh v'Natzliach, Shiur Torah, Bruchim Habayim. We're back here on our Sunday night shiur. That's Baruch Hashem starting our relatively new series based on a sefer by the Rabbi Elimelech Milizhensk, the Tzeitil Katan, which is, we're calling the series Torah HaChassidut, the Torah of the Chassidut. Tonight's shiur is going to be for the Refuah Shlema and Hatzlacha Rabba for Rabbeinu v'Morenu Harav Ephraim ben Shulamit, Rabbanit Sarah bat Anat, Rabbanit Levana bat Sarah, Sarah bat Levana, Avi Mori David ben Nesriya, Imi Morati Doris bat Jora, Naomi bat Sarah, and Sarah bat Sarah, and all of Am Yisrael and all the righteous Noahis that continue to support, continue to help, continue to, Baruch Hashem, help us get to many more hearts around the world, Baruch Hashem. Just as a brief update for some of you, first off, yes, I know that the screen is sideways for some of you. We're having some technical difficulties. I can't do much about it. This is as best as I could get without delaying the shiur further. Second, in regards to the new channel, the BH Kids channel, some of you are aware of it, some of you are not. We, Baruch Hashem, launched a new channel for kids last week, at the end of last week. It's going to have different videos, videos of me teaching the kids, videos of like we had for prayers, lots of interesting things for kids, and certainly very much needed in the Jewish world. And unlike, I would say, the few channels that are out there that are for kids, you're seeing that this channel is free. Of course, your support is appreciated. Anyone that wants to donate, support, but most importantly, share the channel so we can get a lot more subscribers on there, a lot more people watching it. There's going to be there's a lot of work going into it. Each video, as you can see, has some graphics on it and lots of cool stuff. We're going to do our best to get at least one or more videos out per week. But each one, quite frankly, is good for the parents, and it's also good for the kids. At least that's what I've heard so far from the people that have watched it. So you could look up BH Kids Torah on YouTube. BeEzrat Hashem, it'll eventually also have its own website. It'll have a WhatsApp group, and it already has a Facebook page and a YouTube channel that you can find. Other than that, we also are always encouraging you guys to start off the week by ordering some of the Kiruv products to help Am Yisrael. Anyone that watched the new video that came out on our channel, on our main channel, short film about the story that I mentioned in a one of the shiurim recently about the the dying IDF soldier that did not know how to say the Shema Yisrael before he died. That story is simply one of these things that I can't stop thinking about, and really the only solution to these stories not repeating themselves from one person to another is by simply making sure that more Jewish people do tshuva. And the job of getting Jewish people doing tshuva is yours. It's not somebody else's, it's yours. If you're watching this, that means that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants you to know that you are in charge of helping other Jews do tshuva, but not helping other Jews do tshuva by telling them what you heard in the shiur, rather by sharing the shiur. not by telling them about how you read one of the rabbi's books that you found very inspiring, but rather giving them the books. You have to help people by providing them the tools. Many people are very inclined to tell people what they heard in our shiurim and then tell me that it's not really working. And again, everyone has to play their role. Your role is to share the Torah. Your role is to support the Torah. It's not necessarily to always repeat it. Some of you have that gift where you're able to speak to a point where people listen to you, but many people don't. It's not necessarily a bad thing. It just means that you have a different role in the world. So that's why we've made the Kiruv store to make it very simple for everybody to order these books and distribute them in their communities. If you go to kiruvstore.org, kiruvstore.org, you can get an English Hebrew book that's good for everyone. You can get this amazing small book that has really 5 books in it by Rabbi Ephraim. It's all in Hebrew, but it has a lot of interesting topics, whether it's the big question of where was God during the Holocaust, which is a very relevant question to the people that are still struggling with what happened on October 7th, or it's the issues of the cash advance for those people that still think there's an halachic permission to lend money to Jews or to Gentiles with high interest. They, if they know how to read Hebrew in a halachic level, meaning it's much higher level than just traditional Hebrew, they'll read this and they'll realize there is zero permission to be in the cash advance business, zero permission to be in the high interest lending for any Jew whatsoever. Quite frankly, it's bizarre that no one has come out against it aside from us, aside from our teachings over the last 5-6 years that we've been discussing that particular topic. So with that being said, let's get started. We have Baruch HaShem, Rabbi Elimelech Miljinsk upon us. Why upon us? Because each week Rabbi Elimelech shocks us with new teachings of Chassidut that are a world away from the Chassidut that is common today, at least in the media. Most people are not very familiar with the inner workings of Chassidut, even if they're sometimes part of a Hassidish community. But the vast majority of people that are, watching Chassidut or sees Chassidut through YouTube or through visiting 770 or their local Chabad center, their version of Chassidut is literally a world away from the Chassidut of the foundation of Rabbi Elimelech Miljinsk. And, once he taught us what we should do with our time when we're just sitting there, idly waiting to fall asleep or just not doing anything. You're in the elevator telling you that you should think about dying on Kiddush Hashem by jumping into a fire that reaches the heavens. If that wasn't enough, then he took us to the Shema Yisrael and the Amidah, telling us that it's not enough to just jump into the fire. This time you have to imagine yourself being cut up to pieces like Rabbi Akiva, just so you don't abandon God, because all of the missionaries are trying to get you to believe in Yoshke, to believe in other types of idol worship, to believe that God needs you and you don't need Him, all types of mumbo-jumbo that the heretics and idolaters try to teach in our generation. So Rabbi Elimelech Miljinsk wrote this letter for us in this generation, so at the very least we have a path home. We have a direction home. We have an understanding of what is real Chassidut. And even though these teachings are far away from the vast majority of people that are going to hear this, especially the first time that they're hearing this, it's okay, because it teaches us, number one, how great our tzaddikim really were. Our forefathers, how great they really were. The more you hear about what was standard to them, what they were teaching, and if they're teaching it, certainly they are above it, meaning they do even more than what they teach. Because the rabbi doesn't teach everything he does. He teaches things that are below what he does, because he knows that he has abilities that are beyond the average person. So Rabbi Elimelech is teaching us things that are, in essence, standard to his students, but he's doing even above and beyond this. Needless to say, what the great tzaddikim from his prior generations, Rabbi Elimelech was from about 220 years ago. Just imagine what the Baal Shem Tov was, what the Arizal was, what the Ramban was, the Rambam, what the Tanaim, the Zugot, what Moshe Rabbeinu did. Just imagine Am Yisrael that is in the desert, what they're doing over there, and needless to say, what our Avot, Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov were doing. If this is what Rabbi Elimelech Milizhinsky is doing 200 years ago, needless to say, all of the great sages from before him did even more than this. But to us, this is like something that's coming from a different planet. To imagine, jumping into a fire that reaches the heavens in order for you to sanctify God's name because you're willing to die to protect and honor His name, to an average person, like, okay, well, I'd kind of rather just fall asleep. Or if he tells you, listen, when you say the Shema Yisrael, technically you're supposed to imagine yourself, halachically. It's not just Chassidut. Halachically, you're supposed to imagine yourself dying on Kiddush Hashem. The person's like, listen, I barely got the prayer on time. You want me to imagine myself dying on Kiddush Hashem? It's so far away. And you're right. It is far away from the average person, but that's okay. Because Rabbi Elimelech Milizhinsky himself says that if a person cries out to Hashem for a long time, beseeching Him to be able to serve Him, Hashem will answer his request, but it does take more than just a few days. Meaning even Rabbi Elimelech knew that this is far above and beyond of even his students, the new ones, that just came to him at that time 200 years ago. Needless to say, the students of today, the people of today. Everyone that's going to be hearing this, everyone that's reading these teachings, realizes that this is a far, far above and beyond where they stand, but that's the point. It also teaches us the significance of the tzaddikim, the significance of the real chassidim, but also the significance of our own neshamot and how high their potential truly is. So here Rabbi Elimelech takes us to the third section, and now he's going to teach us how to eat like a chassid. Now, of course, the average person out there that has gone to a Farbrengen at their local Chabad, to them, eating seems like that's what Judaism is all about. You get drunk, you eat as much as you possibly can consume, and sometimes even more. But apparently, that, like all of the other teachings that we've had thus far, are a world away from what real Chassidut is all about. Now, even though eating is certainly a holy endeavor that each tzaddik does, it's something that a person can literally sanctify by sanctifying the material. This is something that we learned from the Ramban in the Geret HaKodesh, in the series of Jewish intimacy. But the Chassid, Rabbi Elimelech, is going to take us a little further, give us a little bit more understanding of how to eat like a chassid. And he says as follows. And he also talks about marital obligations, meaning intimacy. You should likewise keep these thoughts in mind whenever you eat or when you fulfill your marital obligations. Here he's again repeating what was already taught. Imagine that there's a fire that reaches the heavens and you are being threatened either to abandon God and believe that He needs you, believe that He has a physical image, believe anything that's against the 13 principles of faith, or you'll be thrown into the fire and you elect to be like Avraham Avinu and jump into the fire. Furthermore, imagine it's not enough to be like Hananiah, Mishael, Azariah, the friends of Daniel that jumped into the fire, but rather to be like Rabbi Akiva, who they cut him up to pieces. As the Gemara in Masechet Brachot, surely some of you are going to learn this in these next few days, at the very least in the next few weeks, as we get to a couple of days from now, the 17th of Tammuz, when the 10 Commandments were broken, when the gates of Yerushalayim were broken. Lots of disasters happened on the 17th of Tammuz, leading to Tisha B'Av, the 9th of Av, where both Batei Mikdash were destroyed. And of course, we had the sin of the spies, and these are days of fast. The 17th of Tammuz, Tisha B'Av are days of fast, but the 3 weeks in between are days where we have to lower the celebration So surely you're going to learn that Gemara that's in the end of Masechet Brachot, where it talks about how Rabbi Akiva died on Kiddush Hashem as these evil monsters were cutting him up to pieces and eventually threw his body back in the cell. They didn't bury him. They sold his meat in the market. Now he could have easily stopped all of this from happening. But when his Talmidim asked him, Rabbi, why now? Why don't you stop it? And he says, all my life I've been waiting to fulfill the mitzvah of sacrificing my life for the sake of honoring God, and now you want me to stop it? No, this is the best day of my life. Meaning this is a thought that was in the mind of Rabbi Akiva day in, day out, throughout his entire life. And of course, his entire life only began when he was 40 years old, when he did tshuva. Now, Rabbi Elimelech is telling us that these thoughts of somebody trying to get you to forsake Hashem and believe in all types of heresy are things you should likewise keep in your mind, not just during a time where you're sitting there idly, not just during a time where you're praying, where it's usually easier to be more focused, at least logically it should be, because you're removed from the stake, you're removed from the images of the outside, the billboards, you're removed from everything, you're separated from everything. He says, no, not just there, but whenever you eat or you fulfill your marital obligations, also have those thoughts in mind too. Now here we're taking it a step further. It's much more difficult to fulfill this than the ones we mentioned before. When a person is sitting there, laying down in his bed, if everything is quiet and he's trying to fall asleep, then it's very, very possible for a person to imagine what we discussed, what Rabbi Elimelech taught us. He focuses, he closes his eyes, he imagines dying in Kiddush Hashem. Certainly possible to do it even every time if he thinks enough about it. On the other hand, when he's praying, saying the Shema Yisrael, he's fulfilling the halakha. That's the actual halakha, is to think that. When he's saying the Amidah, the first line, he's thinking, there's no distractions, there's no phone, there's nothing, in his way, especially if he closes his eyes. Certainly it's possible. But now you're telling me that you want me to continue doing this when there's a 6-ounce steak in front of me, juicy, seems like it's talking to me, wants me to eat it, and the salad looks like it just vegetables from heaven, and then you have all types of sauces and all types of carbs that everybody says is not good for you, but everybody eats them anyway. And you're telling me that now with all of these salads and appetizers, that's when you want me to think about getting burned alive? Wait, instead of eating the tomatoes, you want me to think that I'm a tomato on a barbecue? This is Chassidut. Yes, this is Chassidut. And even more so, when a person is together with his wife, she's saying, I love you, he says, I love you, but in his mind, he's thinking, Rabbi Elimelech Militchinsk repeated what the Ramban said. You have to use your mind to sanctify the material, sanctify the physical. How? Think about this. While you are in cloud 9, how could it be? And Rabbi Elimelech continues and he says, as soon as you begin to feel physical pleasure, you should imagine what is written above. You should immediately declare verbally and in your heart that you would have a greater pleasure and joy in fulfilling the commandment of Kiddush Hashem. I shall be sanctified. As we have explained, that you would have more pleasure with fulfilling this mitzvah than in the physical pleasure that you are now experiencing, since it derives from the leprous skin of the serpent. Whoa! Now we have something that's new. What's new? Okay, so eating, sleeping, resting, marital obligations, praying, dying Kiddushin. Got it. But now he's saying, at the very moment that you are having the greatest pleasure, meaning you just took a bite of this food from heaven that your wife cooked, that the restaurant cooked, that your mother cooked, that whoever made it. And at that moment, you're supposed to think this. Why? Because this pleasure comes from the tzara, the leprous skin of the nachash. This is the zohama of the nachash. What's the zohama of the nachash? What is all of this? First, Rabotai, we have to understand that this big fire that reaches the heavens is not for the sake of just helping you fulfill the mitzvah of Kiddush Hashem, but also it helps a person do two additional things. Number one, it helps a person become less materialistic. And two, it helps a person stay away from sins. How so? How so? The Sefer Shulchan Taor by Rabbi Yaron Reuven. He is one that we learned a lot from in regards to the issues of Tikkun BEIT. He talks endlessly about how to sanctify the chomer, how to eat with kedusha, repeating all of the words here of Rabbi Elimelech and other Hasidim, other tzaddikim throughout the generations, to discuss how to sanctify your process of eating. And the Chovot HaLevavot, 800 years ago, or more, nearly 1,000 years ago, says that although not everybody is going to be able to necessarily sanctify the food to such an extent that they're thinking about dying on Kiddush Hashem, even 1,000 years ago, if you want to become less materialistic, stop being so picky about food. Stop being so picky about food. There are some people that are so picky about their food that it takes them an hour just to decide what they're going to eat for 5 minutes. An hour. Oh, what are we going to eat? Maybe we should order from this restaurant. No, we ate there last week. No, we should eat from that one. I don't know if my taste buds are in line with what they have over there. Maybe we should get from that restaurant. Nah, it's winter right now. This is more, I'm in the mood for something more summery. Okay, maybe we should have that one. No, that's more of like a European food. I'm interested in something Middle Eastern, And they go into a whole selection, like a Rolodex in their mind and on their computers and phones of what they're going to eat for breakfast. By the time they've decided, it's almost lunch. And this is how many people waste their lives, literally planning their meals. And if they have somebody or they themselves know how to cook, Hashem Yishmor V'Yatzi. Certainly it's fun to watch them if they're making a video and how they make it look easy to cut all of these vegetables and make all of these cuts and beautiful settings of the plate and so on. But the amount of work that goes behind the scenes of getting this type of meat and getting these types of vegetables and getting these types of all of these ingredients literally takes hours upon hours of time of their lives just for a meal that's going to last maybe 5 minutes, at best 10. Because that's usually how long a person actually eats. Now, you may go to a restaurant and wait 45 minutes for your food. You'll probably eat it in 5 to 10 minutes. You may stay in the restaurant for another hour or 2 hours, chit-chatting and just ordering more stuff just because you feel weird sitting in a restaurant without food in front of you. So you'll order a dessert, maybe a second appetizer, maybe this, maybe that, a drink, just to drag it out because it's kind of weird sitting in a place that's not your house and you don't have food in front of you. But in reality, the meal itself, 5 minutes. Most people, that's just the way people eat. And unfortunately, if a person is sitting there, spends 20 minutes or a half hour looking at the menu, and the waiter is getting exercise, just going back and forth, asking you if you're ready, no, not yet. Can you tell me again about that steak? And he gives you a whole report about the steak, where the cow lived, who were its cousins, what kind of weather it endured, how did they actually convince the cow to die on Kiddush HaShem because it's going to become a kosher cow that you're going to one day eat. And then perhaps what they decided to do, but wasn't really in the original agreement that they had with the cow when they were convincing it to become kosher. And all types of crazy things that people do in order to prepare everything, whether it's the meat, or it's the chicken, or it's the duck, or it's the whatever it is that they're serving you. And you want to know the story of who's the chef. Does he have any experience? Has he run other restaurants? What kind of tools does he use? Is he Jewish? Is he originally from this community? Oh, he's from Italy. Wow, I heard that there's a big community in Italy. Does he still go back there? Does he have family there? And they want to know about the restaurant and the chef and who's helping the chef. Wait, so he's the chef, he's running everything, but he's not here today? Ah, man. Well, who is running it? And you get a whole report of who is making this food and how they smoked the meat. And they left it there for 180 days just for it to have the right texture in order for your palate on your tongue to agree with it. And all of this goes into a meal you'll eat in 5 minutes. That's it. The amount of time you spent making the money to buy the food certainly took you more than 5 minutes. But people are willing to go to the extent of literally dipping 2 toes into Gehenom just to have a certain type of meal. In some places they have to make reservations 6 months in advance, 2 years in advance. Sick people. Literally, these are sick people. To wait 2 years just so you can go to a certain restaurant and have a meal there? Why? So other people can know that you went there? Literally, this is a pathetic excuse for a life. But unfortunately, there are millions of people doing just that, or else those types of businesses wouldn't exist. And if it's not the high upper echelon of society that is going to 2-year reservations, then it's the average Joe that starts off his day and he wants to start off with something tasty to eat to start off the day, but he can't decide. So he's thinking of where did he order from yesterday? Where did he order from 2 days ago? What does his tongue feel like it's attracted to today? And they put so much effort into whether they want the omelet, or he wants a sunny side up, or perhaps maybe somewhere in between, and he's not really sure if he wants potatoes with it, or perhaps you should add some salt because last time it wasn't salty enough. And all of these thoughts and all of these feelings go into food that will be consumed in moments. So Rabbi Elimelech is trying to remove us from this addiction to materialism, and at the very least, if we cannot sanctify God's name through our eating, at the very least, we should do something that all of us can do. Stop being picky with food. Somebody tells you want to eat such and such? Yes. If it's kosher, you can make a blessing on it. Oh, HaShem, thank you, yes. Well, you're not, no, nothing else. Whatever you have, I'll eat. No, but it's from yesterday. It's leftovers. Perfect. Why throw it out? Let's go. No, but I don't know if you like it. I like it. It's perfect. No, I don't know. I like it. Everything is good. What are you in the mood to drink? Whatever you have. Well, I have water. Water is good. No, but how about what? Your first choice was water. I'll eat water. I'll drink water. If the first choice was something else, say yes to that too. Why? Remove the pickiness. Remove it, and you'll live a much better life. Why? If you're less picky, you'll have much more pleasure in life. Because everything will make you happy. Everything that's good will be a surprise. Everything that's enjoyable will be a true joy. But when you're picky, everything is a disappointment. Because nothing and no one will ever live up to your expectations. This is the same concept when people are going for a shidduch. They're trying to find a new wife, a new husband. People that are picky end up being alone or miserable. Or both. How could it be both? Alone, we can understand. He's too picky. So everyone is either too skinny or too fat or too this or too that. Her nose is this way, our eyes are that way. They're aligned, but not to my taste. Her hair is not exactly the right shade of brown that I prefer, and our eyes are not exactly light like I really like, and our bank account is not exactly puffed up like I prefer for my business that I was hoping she's going to fund, and his car is not exactly new, it's already a year old, and his house is not exactly big enough, it only has 3 bedrooms, and what are we going to do? There's 2 of us already, how are we going to only live in 3 bedrooms? And all types of nonsense that people use to destroy shidduch. Rabbi, somebody told me that they still have desires for making sins, even though they're not making them. Should I break the shidduch for that? Wait, you're telling me that you don't have desires for sins? If you don't, you're an angel. You should go to Gan Eden right now. You're in the wrong world. The fact that he told you that he has desires to make sins, but he doesn't, just simply means he's honest. Not for you to break the shidduch. But that's what happens when people are picky. They're looking for flaws. You can give them a perfect diamond, the flawless diamond, they're going to tell you, no, there's something wrong with it. There must be a catch. No, the GIA certified it. There are other people certified it. This one certified. An experienced jeweler for 50, 60 years certified it. It's perfect. Yeah, but that's the thing. I don't understand. How could it be perfect? But that's what you asked for. Yeah, I don't know. I kind of like the other one anyway. What do you mean? The one that had the flaw? Yeah, the one. Why? You said you wanted perfect. Yeah, but I don't know. Something about that one that has the flaw, I connect to it. These are people that are too picky. Meaning, they cannot handle that something is perfect. They cannot handle. This is also the reason of why they have very, very big difficulty serving HaKadosh Baruch Hu. They cannot put their mind around something being perfect. This is the whole mentality of God needs you also. Why do these heretics say God needs you? Because they cannot get their head around how something can be perfect and not need anything. So when a person is picky, they're easily going to be alone. Why? No one will meet their expectations. Secondly, they'll be miserable. Why miserable? Because being alone is miserable. When she started going on dates to find a husband, she was 20 years old. 8 years later, she's 28. She's almost considered a senior citizen in the shidduch world. We're almost considering giving her Social Security. She's so old for the shidduch world. But she still wants to get married. Fine, get married. Go to the next shidduch, close the deal. No, I'm still looking for Mr. Wonderful. What's Mr. Wonderful? He needs to be ambitious. He needs to be successful. At least 7 figures in the bank account, getting closer to 8 figures. He needs to have the right ideology, meaning he needs to learn Torah. Oh, wait, so you're telling me you're looking for what? You're looking for Yitzchak Avinu? Because Yitzchak Avinu had all of those. Yitzchak Avinu was successful because his father gave him a ton of money. When he sent Eliezer to go find a shidduch, he'd send them with the money. So apparently he was looking for you, not for Leah. He was looking for you. You were born in the wrong generation. Yitzchak was looking for you. Rabotai Ekarim, people go year after year with no problems and no qualms about the fact that they haven't found a shidduch. I can tell you, if I was in the world Chas v'shalom. But I was in the world of looking for a shidduch. I'm 28 years old, and a year passed by and I didn't find somebody. I'd literally spend the whole day in the synagogue crying to HaKadosh Baruch Hu to please help me get out of this misery. How could a person live like this? And people are going through it for 8 years, 9 years, 10 years, by choice. Not because no one's called them and no one wanted to date them. They simply reject everything and anything in front of them. No one's good enough. Why? Because they actually like being alone. They can do whatever they want. People even help them because they feel kind of bad for them, but they want to help them. And, it's a whole sick mental disease that happens where people literally choose to be alone. Now, how could somebody be alone and miserable at the same time? This is the ultimate makkah, the ultimate plague. What is it? Someone that's picky actually finds somebody. And then they become miserable. Why? Because as picky as they were, and as patient as they were to finally settle down and find Mr. Wonderful or find Mrs. Wonderful, what happens? They realize that, it doesn't stay that way. When we were on a date, she always smiled. But in real life, sometimes she cries. In the date, he always smelled good and opened the door for me. In real life, it doesn't necessarily always smell good, and sometimes I prefer that I close the door so he doesn't have to come after me, and sometimes I pretend like I didn't see him, go through the door and close it behind him as if I'm not there. Sometimes we're in a fight, sometimes he's not nice, and what happens is because people are picky, they start looking at all of the small stuff, and this creates fights between the couples, and then they start hating each other. He can't stand her, she can't stand him. She can't wait for him to leave the house, he can't wait for her to leave the house. They both want to go on vacations with somebody else. He invests all of his money into himself, giving himself plastic nose jobs, plastic arms, plastic this, plastic that. His wife wants to get a new dress, wants to get something for the house. Oh, come on, why are you such a big spender? It has nothing to do. It has nothing to do with anything other than the fact that a person that is picky is also self-absorbed. They only care for themselves. And this creates a miserable life. So, to start off, for anyone that finds themselves in any of these situations, you want to start being less materialistic? Easy job. How? Listen to the guidance from over 1,000 years ago. It says, don't be picky with food. What you have available, perfect. Perfect. Ishtabach Shimolad. Rav Tzion Abba Shaul. Many people knew his crown of Torah that he had, but few knew how holy he was. Rav Tzion Abba Shaul would help people around the clock. He was so humble that he literally, you can call him at any time of the day, 24 hours a day, and he picks up the phone himself. He didn't have a gabbai, he didn't have a helper, he would literally pick up himself, even though he had talmidim around him all the time, but he would pick up the phone himself. And people would call at different times, and after answering the calls and questions and issues that people had for hours a day, sometimes he would be 1, 2 o'clock in the morning. And he'd find himself hungry. And then he'd realize he forgot to eat. Forgot to eat the whole day. He hasn't eaten breakfast, lunch, or dinner. Nothing. And it's 2 o'clock in the morning. So one of the Talmidim says, one time the rabbi realized that he forgot to eat, but it was like 1:30 in the morning after answering one of these calls. So he just went to the fridge. He didn't want to wake up the rabbanit. Went to the fridge. He saw there's a piece of salty cheese in there. He just took the cheese, ate it, and that's it. Went back to learning. Didn't think, maybe I should put it with some tomato, maybe I should put it with some this, with some that. Nothing. This is food in front of me, took it, eat it, the end. Let's go, move on. Very similar to the story I told you guys some time ago about Rabbi Yosef. The Rabbanit was always very careful to make sure that the rabbi ate. And she'd always say to the rabbi, you have to eat, you have to eat. Well, the rabbi would give many shiurim, especially during the month of Elul. On Shabbat, he would give 7 shiurim every Shabbat. But during the month of Elul, this would even carry itself during the month, during the weekday. Many, many shiurim. And he would come home late at night. One day, he comes home, it's 1, 2 o'clock in the morning. He's hungry, he hasn't eaten all day. He goes to the kitchen, and he sees that there's a pot. He takes the pot, starts eating, and continues to learn. The next day, the Rabbanit comes to his study, and she says to Rabbi Vadia, why didn't you eat? I told you, you have to eat. He says, I eat. Baruch Hashem, I eat when I came home. She comes, she says, no, the pot is still full. You didn't eat. He goes, no, I ate. There was a pot over there with some soup or something, and I ate it. The Rabbanit said, soup? What soup? She runs back to the kitchen, and she realizes that Rabbi Vadia is so deep into the Torah, he didn't realize that he was eating starch. You know, in those days, they used to cook their own starch for the sake of, the shirts. He didn't realize he's eating starch. That's how far removed he was from enjoying food. Now, I'm not telling you that you have to start eating starch or start ignoring your taste palates, taste buds. But to be picky when it comes to food is absolutely a disaster way to live. Because a person that's so picky is going to have a very, very hard time to enjoy life. It goes far further than just the food itself. It could lead to marital problems. Person gets married, his new wife cooks him something. Certainly the typical 20-year-old, 25-year-old wife is not going to be an expert chef like his 50-year-old mother that's already been a wife for 30 years, already made a bunch of mistakes, already learned a lot from her mother and so on. But a person that's picky with food, what is he going to do? He's going to tell his new wife that's brand new, that doesn't really know the difference between salt and sugar even, that she's a bad cook, and destroy her confidence and his marriage in the process. And chas v'shalom, if he says things about what happens during the marital relations, as one fool came and told me that he did, and unfortunately I wish it was only one fool that told me the stupidity of what he said to his wife, but there was more. But there's one that always sticks out in my mind of how he was proud of this. He was proud of this. Came to me after a lecture. And we're sitting, and he said he had an argument with his wife. She's unhappy with him, but he thinks that she's being ridiculous, and she took it to, she's misunderstanding. I told him, well, what is she misunderstanding? He said, well, she went to the mikveh, and that was the time. I said, okay, Baruch Hashem, so what's the problem? Well, I told her after everything was done that she's boring. And I told him, your marriage is over. He goes, what? What do you mean? No, she didn't say she wants a divorce. I'm like, give it time. Your marriage is over. She will never be with you ever again. He goes, nah, come on, Rabbi, why are you exaggerating? I said, no, I'm not exaggerating. You just murdered your wife. You don't realize it, but that's what you did. And I tried to explain to his stupid head, and the reason why I call stupid head is because somebody that murders a Bat Yisrael is stupid. Especially one that gave him kids. And that's what happened. It was not even a month, 2 months later, she filed for divorce, and he's still miserable to this day. But he thinks he's right. Picky people always think they're right. Picky people always are convinced they're right. But Rabotai Karim, being picky is a disease. It comes from arrogance. And a person can easily remove it when it comes to food. Other things may take a little more time. The Gemara in Masechet Pesachim, page 49b, says that if a person allows his daughter to marry an Ama Aretz, an ignoramus, instead of a Torah scholar, he might as well give her to the lions, because our husband is going to be just like the lion. What does it mean, like the lion? Just like the lion. Eats whatever is in front of him without any type of manners, without any type of care of who, what, when is in front of him. So does the Amaretz. He has no manners, he has no mannerisms, he has no nothing. And the same goes when it comes to intimacy. He acts like a lion there too. And the Gemara warns the parents to never allow their kids to marry an Amaretz. Why? Your daughter will be miserable. Your daughter will be miserable. It's only a matter of time before she realizes it. Because in the beginning it all sounds cute. Oh wow, he loves me. Look, he bought me a bracelet. Give it time, she'll be crying. She'll be crying. Why? Because that's what happens. Without Torah, a person does not know how to behave. A person does not know how to be generous with the right things. They may know, and sometimes not even that, they may know how to be generous with money. But they may not know how to be generous with words, with compliments, with time. And unfortunately, those are much more important than money. And it's even worse when a person is not even generous with money. So now, Rabotai Karim, we have ourselves, Rabbi Elimelech, taking us deeper into this tunnel of Kedusha, of Chassidut, telling us that we have to align our thoughts whenever we eat, whenever we fulfill our marital obligations, specifically at the time where there is physical pleasure, to the extent where we're thinking an elevated thought, that the moment that we have this pleasure, we're thinking about all of the most horrible things happening, where they're coming, they're chasing the person. And he continues and he says, and thou should say, even if murderers were to grab me in the midst of eating or marital relations and torture me to make me deny God's unity, I would be happier to sanctify God's name than to enjoy this physical pleasure. Here Rabbi Elimelech elevates it a step further. If we thought we were far from the first teachings of Chassidut, which is just simply think about dying on Kiddush Hashem without torture, instead of sitting there idly counting sheep. If we thought we were far from ever doing that, needless to say, far from doing that on Shema Yisrael during prayer, here, different planet. Different planet. Here he's telling us that during the time where there's a climax, there is a highlight of taste, highlight of pleasure. You just finished grilling these beautiful minute steaks, these beautiful, ribeye steaks, burgers, whatever it is that you like. All of the juices aligned with the stars and everything is there. And you take the first bite after you cut it carefully just to make sure it's aligned with the time and the clock. And you have this little perfect square just smoothly go into your mouth, and it's literally as if it's melting by itself, talking to you. Rabbi Elimelech says at that moment that you're feeling that pleasure from that first bite, which is usually the best bite, aside from the last bite. Think, even if there were murderers grabbing me in the midst of eating, torturing me to deny God's name, I'd be happier to die sanctifying God's name than this physical pleasure. Why should be the question that everybody should be asking. We can understand not being picky. Every one of us needs a little bit of work to not be picky. Fine. But then you should tell me, listen, don't eat too much food, or don't eat too much delicious food. But you're telling me that anything that tastes good, anything that feels good, during that time think this. During that time think these awful things happening to you. Why? Why is this any good? How is this serving HaKadosh Baruch Hu? The Gemara in Masechet Sanhedrin, page 72, asks a question. Why was the Ben Sorer Umoreh killed? After all, the wayward child, as the Torah says, that ate a lot of meat and drank a lot of wine and did not want to listen to his parents when they told him to calm down, to behave. The Torah itself says they bring him to the Beit Din, and the Beit Din kills him, even though he's only 12 and a half years old. He's not even bar mitzvah yet. So the Gemara asks, why would they kill him though? Okay, so he's a glutton. He eats nonstop. He drinks nonstop. He's nasty to his parents. But death penalty? Why? The answer that the Torah says, Yamut zakai velo yamut chayav. Let him die meritorious and not die with an obligation. What does this mean? The Gemara says, the Torah got to the end of his thoughts. The end of his thought process. Because if he is a glutton already now, to the point where he's addicted to meat, addicted to wine, addicted to fulfilling his physical desires, to the point of no control, then it's only a matter of time before he starts making big sins. As soon as he sees that his physical desires are not within reach, he'll go and steal it from somebody. And if he sees that somebody's in his way, he'll even kill that person that's in his way. Why? Because he's addicted to his sins. He's addicted to his physical desires. So the Torah got to the end of his thought process. Where do we see this? This week's parasha. Parashat Balak. Parashat Pinchas. Continues the story that started in Parashat Balak of last week, where at the end of the parasha we see that the Midianite women, the Zonot, made Am Yisrael sin to the point where Kadosh Baruch Hu nearly annihilated all of the Jewish people. But how did this happen? Bilam gave an idea to Balak, and he says, their God, the God of Israel, hates immorality. Get the Jewish people to commit immorality, and their God will destroy them. You won't even have to fight them. Go and send all of your beautiful women to make them sin. But how? How do you get them to sin? What, they're all going to walk around and say, okay, come? No, that's going to obviously look too obvious. The rabbis are going to stop them. So what do? They set up a market. They set up a market in the path where Am Yisrael was walking eventually. They set up a market, and the market looked innocent. Yeah, each one had a tent with all types of products, and there's an old lady in the front. And the old lady is advertising cheap prices, please help, So, the guys went, you know what, let me go check out this market. I haven't been to a market in a while. Let me go check out this market. I'll see you guys later. Oh, you know what, I'll come. And a bunch of guys go to the market. They go to the market. And the old lady is advertising these prices. Listen, there's even a better price products inside. Sure, let me go inside the tent. He goes in the tent and he sees beautiful Zonah, Midianite, over there with prices that are cheaper than dirt. And he starts looking and she goes, oh wow, you're a good customer. Sure, you want this one? Sure, you know what, you're a good customer, let me give you some wine. And she starts chatting with him, gives him yain nesech, forbidden wine. And since he feels like a big shot. He's buying half the store. Feels like a big shot. Top of that, this pretty little girl is talking to him. Feels like a big shot. She's even smiling at him. Before you know it, she gave him wine. Oh, maybe I do got a chance. Even though I'm 20 years older than her, she's young enough to be my granddaughter. Before you know it, she tries to convince him to sin with her. And he has, whoa, hold on a second, this is happening to me, and before he even has enough time to think, he's already making the sin. And right after that, she shows him, you want it? Worship this idol. And of course, at that point, he's at a point of no return. Hence the reason why Kadosh Baruch Hu's punishment was a plague that killed 24,000 on the way to nearly killing everybody. But how did he get that far? How did he get that far, Rabotai Karim? You see, Rabotai, Rabbi Elimelech Milijinsk already gave us the hint of what leads us to make all of these sins. He said to us, there's a reason why you have to think about dying on Kiddush Hashem during not just your pleasures, your connection to material, but actually at the point where there is the highest level of pleasure, the greatest pleasure and joy being fulfilled. That's when you have to think about HaKadosh Baruch Hu especially. Why? Because all of this pleasure that you are now experiencing is being derived from the tzarat of the Nachash, from the leprous skin of the serpent, of the Nachash. What is this leprous skin? You see, Rabotai, one of the jobs that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave the Satan is not about getting him to make a sin or make mitzvot. Because sometimes the Satan will entice you to sin. Other times he'll even entice you to make a mitzvah. There are certain mitzvot that come from the Satan. He'll entice you to make a mitzvah so you can gain arrogance and feel like you're better than other people. He'll make you make a sin so you can go into make even bigger sins. The whole point of the Satan, his whole task, is not about mitzvot or sins. The task of the Satan is to distance you from Hashem, to be the barrier. Where if you're able to overcome the obstacle he has in your way, you'll connect to Hashem and then you deserve it. You deserve the prize that comes with it. But if you cannot surpass the obstacle he has in your way, you don't deserve it. You don't deserve to be connected to Hashem. And one of the things that the Satan does, Rabotai, is he's in charge of all the physical pleasures. As Rabbi Elimelech says, all of these physical pleasures that are above and beyond, they are from the hand of the Satan, from the Nachash. As the Gemara in Masechet Ketubot will elaborate for us what all of this really means. The Gemara in Masechet Ketubot talks about, in page 104a, talks about the death of Rabbi HaKadosh, Rabbi Yehuda Nasi. It says that on the day that Rabbi died, the rabbis decreed a public fast and begged for heavenly mercy. So much so that they said that whoever says that the Rebbe has died shall be pierced with a sword. Everybody was simply incapable of dealing with Rabbi HaKadosh dying. This is Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, the one who wrote the Mishnah. But at the time of Rabbi's passing, he extended his 10 fingers to Shamayim, to Hashem, and he says, Ribono She'olam, Master of the universe, it is revealed and known before you that I toiled with my 10 fingers in the study of Torah, but I did not benefit from the worldly pleasures, even according to the toil of my little finger, my pinky finger. May it be your will that there be peace in my place of eternal rest. And a heavenly voice emerged and said, He will come with peace. They will rest upon their resting places. Rebbe was thus assured that there will be peace in his place of rest, meaning going straight to Gan Eden. Now, Rebbe HaKadosh was extraordinarily wealthy. He was from the family of King David. So, in line to possibly be Mashiach. In fact, the sages said that if anybody was Mashiach during that generation, it would have been him. He was so righteous. Because despite his wealth, he did not enjoy the wealth, his material wealth in the world. He distributed to people to help people. And he even says that he did not enjoy with all the material that Hashem gave him, with the hundreds of horses and the countless billions of dollars that he had. He said, I didn't enjoy even a pinky. As a side note, I heard one Chacham saying that really what he's saying, I didn't enjoy even my smallest finger, is referring really to the BEIT. That Rabbi HaKadosh was known as Ish Kodesh. He was called Rabbi HaKadosh. Not everyone's called Kadosh, but that's also because of how strict he was when it came to the matters of morality. Rabbi HaKadosh throughout his entire life never looked below his waist. Some people spend lots of time looking below their waist. Rabbi HaKadosh never looked at his waist, below his waist even once. So Rabbi HaKadosh was literally called a Kadosh because of his Kedusha. And he says, I did not even enjoy this world as far as the fingertip, as far as the small finger. Now, the Tosfot over there, on Masechet Ketubot, page 104, bring a Tana Devei Eliyahu. Eliyahu Hanavi. Eliyahu Hanavi is a sefer called Tana Devei Eliyahu. Fantastic sefer, lots of interesting information, teachings of Eliyahu Hanavi. And there's Eliyahu Zuta, Eliyahu Rabbah. This is an Eliyahu Rabbah, chapter 26. Eliyahu Hanavi teaches as follows. About this, what happened over here. It says, Maaseh ברבי יהודה הנשיא, שאמר בשעת מיתתו, גלוי וידוע לפני הקדוש ברוך הוא שעמלתי בתורה בכל 10 אצבעותיי ולא אכלתי ולא נהניתי בעולם הזה, אפילו באחד מאצבעותיי הקטנים. Same thing that we just read in the Gemara. ומעולם לא אמרתי אלך ואוכל ואשתה ואענה מן העולם הזה ואלך אחר כך מתוך תענוגי העולם הזה. And he even elaborates further. He says, and I never even said once that I'll eat and I'll drink and I'll enjoy this world and then I'll even enjoy the next world even further. אלא לא עשיתי לי אכילה ושתייה רק כדי חיותי. Rather, I only ate and drank, meaning it's not only didn't enjoy the money and the immorality, but also even food. I didn't even enjoy food. I only ate and drank just for the sake of survival. ועסקתי בתורה כל ימי חיי, and I toiled in Torah all the days of my life. לכן עכשיו תן לי מנוחה בבית עולמי. And therefore now he says to Hashem, give me some rest in this world. Because I already toiled I didn't enjoy any pleasure of the material world, not the money, not to anything. Okay. Now, Rabotai Karim, Tana Devei Eliyahu is saying, ואם לא זכה אדם לבקש רחמים על דברי תורה שייכנסו לתוך מאיו, מכל מקום יבקש רחמים על האכילה ושתייה יתרה שלא ייכנסו לתוך מאיו. He says, now if there's a person out there that's thinking, oh, you know what, maybe I'll be a tzaddik like Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, and I'll toil in Torah non-stop, and I'll learn, and it says, a person that is pleading with Hashem, please, give me more Torah. Put some more Torah into my intestines. Instead, you should plead with Hashem that He should have mercy on you, that not too much food and the material pleasures, material food of this world go into your belly. Why? Because a person that uses this world to enjoy every bit of taste, every bit of food, every bit of pleasure, they're so picky about their food, certainly they're never going to have any pleasure in the spiritual world because they're too connected to the material world. So before you even pray for Hashem to help you with Torah, pray for Hashem that you don't enjoy the material too much. Many people pray to be rich, pray to have all of these different physical pleasures. If you want to be great in Torah, you can start by asking Hashem not to give you too much pleasure with these things. Why? This is because the way that HaKadosh Baruch Hu created this world is that it's temporary. And in such a way where Eliyahu Navi gives a example. Imagine there's a place that's a place where they burn. Let's say they melt jewelry, they melt precious metals, they burn wood. And he says if you have all of the trees that are in the world go into this place, they all go, they burn, they turn to nothing, nothing comes out of them. He says the same thing, even if it's the best trees in the world, they all go into it, they burn, they turn to nothing, the end. He says the same thing with the throat of a person. Give him all of the food that's in the world, the greatest food in the world. Once it goes in his throat, it's gone, he loses it, the end. Meaning that when a person spends all of their time, their efforts, their mind, chasing pleasures, what they're chasing is something that is more pleasurable in the mind than actual reality. More pleasurable as an illusion than what the reality is. And in the end, they don't gain anything out of it. Even if you ate the best food in the world, you tasted it for 3 to 6 seconds, maybe 8 if you're one of these weird eaters that chews for an hour and a half. The average bite that you're going to take from a food is going to be in your mouth no more than 8 seconds before you swallow it, and pretty much the taste is irrelevant. Once it's in your throat, it's gone. So to spend so much time preparing the food, making sure that every bite is a certain way, and you eat this and you eat that, it's literally wasting your life away. But the Satan wins. Why does the Satan win? Why does the Satan win? Because you see, these desires are in his control. The moment that you fall for that desire, he now has another part of your body under his control. That's how he catches you. So he catches you with the desire for eating. So he knows that if he wants to steer you one way or the other, it has to be through food. So if he wants you to make a certain sin with something or someone, food has to be involved. So he wants to send you some zonah from Midian. So what is he going to do? He's going to have one of your friends, your best friends, or even your religious friend, invite you out to a night at a steakhouse. New steakhouse, grand opening. I got us seats. Just so you can go, just so you can have the steak, just so you can chit-chat and talk about how great it is. And right before you're on your way home, the waitress that's about 10 years younger than you slips you a little note with our phone number on it. And she says, call me. You, my friend, have decided already you're going to call. How? You started with the eating. Yeah, but what about your wife and kids at home? They're home. She said to call her. Well, I'm not going to call her. That's not nice. That's not nice not to call her. Come on, it's going to be Chilul Hashem, he's going to tell you. Well, I'm not going to call. Somebody says call. Maybe she needs my help. At 3 o'clock in the morning, she needs your help. Rabotai Kareem, the Satan knows how to play the game much better than you, much better than us, much better than anyone. He's just looking for ways to trap you. And the second that you fall for a certain desire, that's what he's going to use. That's why he's the Nachash. That's why he is the Zo'ama of the Nachash. The impurity of the Nachash, it doesn't kill right away. He's just planting seeds. Wait, so he likes food. Okay, that's good to know. What else does he like? He likes girls. Okay, that's good. Oh, we got that. What else does he like? He likes money. Oh, okay, that's good. What else does he like? He watches sports every day. Oh, perfect. So what are we going to do? Invite him to a steakhouse watching the Super Bowl with the waitress that forgot to get dressed. There you go. And before you know it, he forgets he has a wife, he forgets he has kids, he forgets he's Jewish, he forgets he's old, he forgets he's young, he forgets everything because he thinks he's going to watch a game. The Satan says, yeah, you're going to watch a game all right. And Rabotai Karim, when a person allows their desires to take over, they're simply giving the Nachash, the Satan, more opportunities to trap them in a trap that's deadly. Piece by piece, the Yetzirah, the Nachash, gains control over a person in order to entice them to do something that's going to distance them from Hashem. Sometimes it's clearly to make a sin. Other times it's to make a mitzvah that will lead to even bigger sins. And just like the Ramban, Nachmanides, said in Parashat Kedoshim, that a person not only has to serve Hashem by sanctifying himself, by staying away from the forbidden, but rather sanctify themselves by limiting the permitted, and thereby never become despicable in the name of the Torah by saying that since something is permitted, therefore I can have as much of it as I want. Wrong. Just because it's permitted doesn't mean it's permitted as much as you want, and it doesn't mean it's permitted whenever you want. And a person has to know that when they allow their desires to be the steering wheel of their life, they're already a prisoner of the Satan without even knowing it. Now, the Gemara in the same Masechet Ketubot gives an illustration. Okay, Rabbi HaKadosh was tzaddik, was kadosh. We see how he was so holy that literally before he died, he's speaking to Hashem, Hashem speaking back to him, guaranteeing and assuring him that his place of rest is going to be all you can possibly look forward to. Imagine, even in your wildest dreams, we cannot imagine what Rabbi HaKadosh has. But it doesn't work like that for everyone. Not everyone gets the same message. And the Gemara says that Rabbi Chia Bar Gamda says, in the name of Rabbi Yossi ben Shaul, that the moment that a tzaddik, that a righteous person passes from this world, the ministering angels say before Hashem, the Holy One, blessed is He, Master of the universe, the righteous so-and-so is coming. And Hashem says to them, let the righteous one come from their resting places and let them go out and greet to them. And when the righteous one comes out, the ministering angels say, he will come with peace. Rabbi Elazar says, when a tzaddik passes from this world, 3 groups of ministering angels go out to meet him. One says to him, come with peace. Another says, he who walks in his straight path. And one says to him, meaning he calls him, oh, that's the tzaddik that went on the straight path. And the third angel says, he will come with peace, they will rest upon their resting places. But when a wicked person comes, leaves this world, also three groups of angels come to him, but in this case, they're angels of destruction. And they come out to meet him. And the first one says, En shalom amar Hashem lareshaim. There is no peace, says Hashem, for the wicked. The second one says to him, he will lie down in sorrow. And the third one says, descend and laid with those who've blocked heart. And be laid with those who've blocked heart. So we see that the end is not the same for everybody. Some people, Rabbi Kadosh, wonderful end, wonderful welcome to an eternal place of good. But the people that are addicted to desires certainly are not going to be in the same path as Rabbi Kadosh, rather the other. Now, unfortunately, what happens sometimes, Rabotai, is that people delude themselves. And this is the third part of this section that Rabbi Elimelech mentions. He says, make sure, however, that you say this honestly, meaning all of the things that we talked about. Dying on Kiddush Hashem, jumping into a fire, all the things. We've said it several times. Make sure, however, that you say this honestly, with words that are deeply rooted in your heart, and with a complete sincerity. Don't try to deceive yourself as if you can fool heaven, God forbid. This is how the tzaddikim are showing us that they understand, number one, reality. Not everybody's in the same thing. Just like your fingers are all different, people are all different. You cannot assume that, okay, you heard this, you read this, therefore you can jump into it and do it today. Rabbi Elimelech says, don't fool yourself. Thinking that you can do. You can aspire, grow. But worse than fooling yourself is thinking that you can fool the Creator. Because sometimes the zo'ama of the nachash, the impurity of the Satan, can fool a person in such a way that they can actually delude themselves to thinking that they are righteous, when in reality they're a heretic, they're apikos, they're rasha. In the best case scenario, they're simply far away from being righteous. But some people are convinced that they are. How does this work? Mesilat Yesharim, chapter 10. The Ramchal lived about 300 years ago. He was a tzaddik, he was a mekubal, he was a chassid, he was everything good. And his Mesilat Yesharim, The Path of the Just, is one of the foundational books in Judaism. And he writes as follows in chapter 10 of a book that every person that reads it knows that they'll have to read it again, and when they read it again, they realize that they have to read it a third time, and by the time they read it a third time, they realize that if they read it another 97 times, perhaps they fulfilled their obligation. But of course, this is over a lifetime. This is not in one day. No one's expecting anyone to do everything in one day. But we do expect to understand things, superficially at least, when we read them. And the Mesilat Yesharim gives a clear message. In chapter 10 in the beginning, he says as follows: the virtue of cleanliness is associated with a person who has completely cleansed himself of all bad traits and all sins. Alvai, all of us reach such a thing. This means not only those sins that are acknowledged as such and are clearly recognizable, meaning It's not just being clean of desecrating Shabbat, wasting seed, adultery, eating chelev, eating non-kosher. No, those are obvious sins. Cleanliness goes a step further. Not just those that are clearly recognizable, but also, says the Ramchal, those that the heart has been seduced into rationalizing as permissible. In actuality, when we look into the matter, we will discover that the only reason that this person considers these things permissible is because his heart is still slightly afflicted by lustful desire. It's a blemish. He's not entirely cleansed of it. And therefore, it is able to entice him towards leniency. Here the Ramchal is giving us an atomic bomb of clarification of all of the delusional people that somehow find it permissible to humanize God, to lower the significance of God, to minimize his perfection to the point where they say God needs you rather than you need God, to those that lower reward and punishment into a completely heretical standpoint of saying that there is no punishment, and if there is a punishment, it's only a embarrassment for a year, as if you could make every sin under the sun, violate Shabbat, LGBTQ, steal, rob, do whatever it is, but a few angels are going to simply say jokes about you, make fun of you, make you feel bad for a year, and that's it. Then you can go to heaven with Moshe Rabbeinu. And there are people doing this, lowering the truth to a point where it doesn't make sense, but yet many follow it, many believe it. There's even one heretic that's in the Manis Friedman camp that says that there is Gehenom, but it's only for women. Men do not get Gehenom, they only go through reincarnations. Literally, you're starting to see how everybody has like a menu of where they want all of these fundamental issues to stand. One will say that God needs you, one will say that God wants you, another one says that there's no punishment, all of these things. And the Ramchal HaKadosh is telling us why. Why is this the case? He says, this person has a desire. In fact, he's been seduced into this desire, this lustful desire that he has, this forbidden desire that he has to such an extent that he simply can't get rid of it. His infatuation with money, with kavod, with women, with whatever is forbidden is so extensive that he has found a way to rationalize that it's permissible. But when we look deeper into this person, we realize that the only reason he has ever even come to the thoughts that he's telling people that Gehenom is smaller, that God needs you, is not really because he believes that God needs you or that Gehenom is smaller. No, but rather because he knows that if he continues with his desire, with this addiction that he has, he's going to have to be punished by a God that doesn't need him. He's going to have to go to Gehenom much longer than a year. He doesn't like to hear that. He doesn't like to feel that. So, since he's afflicted, meaning he has like a disease, a spiritual disease of lust, and he hasn't cleansed himself from it, and he doesn't want to cleanse himself from it, what happens? He starts deluding himself to believe that the punishment is just not going to happen. Not to me. I do a lot of good. And then Stan says, oh, look at this guy. He thinks that Hashem's not going to punish him for all of the bad things that he's doing and wants to do and is doing. So you know what? Let me help him. He wants to do all those things. Let me help him. What does the Satan do? He makes one of his videos reach 7 million people that are liking it. 7 million people press like on his stupid teachings where he says God needs you, or there's no Gehenom, or there's all types of things that are the opposite of the fundamentals of the Torah that's true and factual for 3,300 years. It hasn't changed, but he has decided to change it. And 7 million people pressed like. He's like, you see? Wow. They agree with me. Meaning that maybe this is the truth. Wait, but you know it's not true. You know that the Gemara says otherwise. You know that the Zohar says otherwise. You know that Sifrei Hasidut say otherwise. Yeah, all those things that you're saying. Why are you bringing sources again? Look at the people. Look how many people agree. This is like similar to the old joke of a Hamas terrorist that has a few $1 billion from Qatar, comes to Gaza, comes to the West Bank, comes to see how the people are doing over there. Whether there is a war or not, they're always fighting. Fighting each other, fighting this, fighting that. Poverty is standard to them. And this billionaire is coming over there, seeing, all of a sudden, a bunch of kids come to him. Hey, food, give us some money. It's like, come on, these kids are bothering me. So what do you say? You know what? Yeah, you know what? Yeah, they have, the Jews are giving some food over there, down there. There's a bunch of food in the other street. Down the street over there, go. Food over there. He runs. And the kids start running. All the kids start running. Before you know, they start telling other kids. Before you know, he sees the whole town is running to go get this food that's over there that he made up. Before you know it, he starts seeing, wow, all these people are going? Where are you guys going? To get the food. Oh, yeah, there's food. He goes with them. He starts believing his own lie. This is the same thing with the Baalei Ta'ava. Rabotai Karim. They're not teaching you Chassidut like they say they are. They're not teaching you philosophy. They're simply showing you that they're lustful people and they need someone to help them calm their conscience. Because betoch tocham, inside, they know they're liars. Inside, they know they're liars. But they're not philosophers like they say they are or portrayed as if they are. And they're certainly not people that are teaching you Chassidut, because we're learning Chassidut from the masters of Chassidut. And it's a world away. And therefore, the Ramchal continues and says, but a person who is thoroughly cleansed of this blemish and of any trace of evil that desire leaves in its wake will be sharp-eyed and keenly discerning, and he will not be swayed in any manner. And therefore he will be able to recognize as evil anything that could be a sin, even the most minor of sins, and he will distance himself from it. Accordingly, the Gemara, Masechet Sanhedrin, page 23a, has the sages teaching that those who have so completely purified their actions that are not even stirring of evil remains are called the clean mind of Jerusalem. See here, the Ramchal is telling you that yes, the process of tshuva is lifelong. The process of perfecting yourself is lifelong. The process of cleanliness is lifelong and is gradual progress. But a person can delude themselves to think that they're already at the finish line before they even started. In fact, while they're going in reverse. How? Simple. They look for ways to rationalize the forbidden. The Shulchan Aruch actually has an halacha that even if a Talmid Chacham finds a way to permit something that everyone else is forbidden, everyone else says it's forbidden, it's been forbidden, but he finds a legitimate way to allow it, Shulchan Aruch says, don't do it. Why? It'll look to everybody else, since everyone else is on the other side, for years, for generations, it'll look like you're permitting the forbidden. Meaning, anyone that comes to you and says, no, this is new. We haven't discovered the Torah until now. What they're telling you is that all of the sages that had Ruach HaKodesh, all of the prophets, all of the giant scholars that literally lived and breathed Torah, that sanctified their bodies to the point where literally they thought about dying on Kiddush Hashem on a daily basis, on a regular basis. All of these people that were Hasidim, with or without being part of Hasidut. All of these people that literally learned Torah even during times where they were being chased by the Nazis, by the Crusades, by the Spaniards, by the different places, different enemies of Am Yisrael, literally killing them, kidnapping them, imprisoning them, torturing them. All of these giant Torah scholars that literally could not breathe without words of Torah. If you're saying you're coming up with something new now, that none of them knew, what you're saying is that you're greater than all of the sages that ever lived. You're greater than all of the Hasidim, all of the Rishonim, all of the Achonim, all of the Geonim, the Savoraim, the Amoraim, the Tanaim, the Zugot, the prophets. You're greater than Moshe Rabbeinu even. And before you know it, you'll even say that God needs you. Oh, actually you did. You see, Rabotai Yekarim, the ego of a person can make them permit the forbidden in such a way that they will rationalize it for themselves, for a day, for two, for a year. But sometimes the ego goes so far as to drink more of the zo'ama of the Nachash and decide that they're going to teach the public this same poisonous ideology. Why? Because once a person decides to partner with the Satan in order to pacify their own conscience, in order to quiet their own conscience, they're not realizing that they are now becoming not just a partner with the Satan, they're becoming a soldier of the Satan. And the fact that they're getting success is to their own detriment. This, Rabotai, is what Rabbi Elimelech Milizhensk is telling us not to do. Don't lie to yourself thinking that you're more righteous than what you are. Certainly don't imagine yourself as a wicked person. Have some positive words to say about yourself, positive thoughts about yourself. But everyone has to be realistic as far as where they stand. And while many of us are far away from having our thoughts always about HaShem, needless to say, always about dying on Kiddush Hashem, eating with that in mind, procreating with that in mind, Still, it helps us to know that these giant Torah scholars, these giant tzaddikim, these chassidim, that were able to do it even more than what they're teaching, it's not only important for us to listen to them, to learn from them, but it's completely ridiculous for anyone to say that they know more than them, that they've discovered something that these tzaddikim did not already teach. If somebody says, I have something new, the Chazon Ish already said, Chadash asur min Torah. New is forbidden according to the Torah. Now you would say, yeah, but what about a person having a chidush? Even you, Rabbi, brought some chidushim. Yes, chidushim are allowed as long as they are in line with the other fundamental teachings of the Torah. Meaning they're not contradicting Rashi, they're not contradicting the Shulchan Aruch, they're not contradicting the great tzaddikim that have lived before you, or even the great tzaddikim that live among you. If you think that your chidush is legitimately good while being contradictory to everything that came before it, then you, my friend, are wrong. Rabbi Elimelech taught this Torah, and to this day, those that practice Chassidut aspire to follow his words. But with everybody being at different levels, the Rebbe knew that not everyone is going to be able to achieve the highest points. But it's still beneficial for us to know how high our neshama could really go to if we really push ourselves enough, if we really dedicate ourselves to Torah. One of the Talmidim of Rabbi Elimelech, the Baal Darkei Tzedek, writes that when you say the words of Shema Yisrael, you should imagine that someone is torturing you and stripping your skin off your flesh, yet you're willingly bearing it to sanctify God's name. I heard from Rabbi Elimelech that you should imagine throwing yourself into a huge raging fire in order to fulfill this mitzvah of I will be sanctified among the children of Israel. That is, you would gladly be burned alive or experienced some of other torture for the sake of fulfilling this positive commandment. So you see that some of the tzaddikim that lived after Rabbi Elimelech spoke his words like it's Mount Sinai, like it's the Ten Commandments. But yet Rabbi Elimelech also didn't want us to only think about the ultimate success. There's also smaller successes. That a person can reach. And the Bet Tfilah writes that there's a prayer that they would say before eating. Behold, I am coming to eat and drink in order to be healthy and strong, so that I can serve the Blessed One. I'm ready to fulfill the commandment to recite blessings before and after eating food. If I eat bread, I'm ready to fulfill the commandment to wash my hands and recite the accompanying blessings, to make the blessing over the bread and dip a piece in salt, to discuss Torah at the table, to wash my fingers after eating, meaning the Mayim Achonim, and to recite the Birkat HaMazon. All in order to bring pleasure to my Creator and to rectify each thing in its supernal root. May the pleasantness of the Lord our God be upon us, and the work of our hands establish for us, and the work of our hands establish it. See, here you're talking about something much simpler. Simply a person saying the Yiratzon before they pray of what they're prepared to do all of this stuff. But interestingly enough, it also mentions about how a person is doing this also for the sake of a tikkun, for the different food that they're eating. As we all know, there's reincarnations, there's gilgulim. And a person that does not fulfill their purpose in this world can be reincarnated not only as a human being, but also sometimes as an animal, a plant. And Rabbi Elimelech Milizhinsk says that if a person has reincarnated into a cow, into a chicken, into some type of other product, in order for them to be elevated, as the Arizal teaches, they have to be sanctified by somebody eating them with blessing, with kedusha. But he writes something extraordinary. That a person that does not eat their food with sanctity, meaning they eat like a lion, they eat with carelessness, they may be considered like as if they are Yerovam ben Nevat, that sinned and caused others to sin. Why? Because you're eating food that has souls of different people that need your help in order to elevate themselves. But instead of elevating them, your despicable nature is actually causing them to suffer further. So we see, Rabotai, that you don't have to reach the ultimate top in order to have success, in order to be resourceful, in order to be helpful. In fact, when a person looks at the Noam Elimelech, they'll see that Rabbi Elimelech writes in Parashat Korach that when a tzaddik prays, they connect and attach themselves to HaShem with pure and clear holy thoughts. When they eat, they tremble at the thought that this physical act might lower them and sever their connection to holiness. And therefore, that while they're eating, the tzaddikim strive even harder to sanctify themselves in order to cling to Hashem with a great spiritual attachment. And therefore it turns out that the tzaddikim are even holier when they eat than when they pray. Whereas for most people the opposite is true. Because the tzaddikim sanctify themselves through their food, while regular people sanctify themselves in prayer more than when they eat. But this does not mean that a person should just simply only try on one versus something else. Because in fact, the Pri Tzaddik in Kuntres et Ha'ochel writes that even one meal that a person consumes properly during the week or on Shabbat, where they're eating selflessly, with a desire to channel all of their lower cravings into the service of Hashem, can actually uplift all of the food that they've eaten the entire week. Just like the Kabbalists teach that a single prayer offered with proper kavanah uplifts all of the unfit prayers of the entire year. This is what we talk about during the Yom Kippur and Rosh Hashanah, where significant prayer during that time could literally fix your prayers for the entire year. Because eating is similar to prayer, where it's a form of sacrifice. And like sacrifices, where atonement for one transgression brings about atonement for another, similar transgression, as the Gemara in Masechet Shabbat says, page 71a, so too one act of eating uplifts another that's just like it. And therefore a single act done with spiritual enthusiasm and proper intentions for the sake of heaven can uplift all of the mundane actions that you have ever done. So here you're seeing that perhaps we cannot be tzaddikim that every time we eat we've elevated ourselves and thought about dying on Kiddush Hashem, but that should not get a person to simply give up on the whole concept. Because Even if you try and fail and try and fail and forget to try and then try to remember, but you succeed even one time during this year, that could help you for the whole year. Now, I'm not saying only try one time, because certainly to get to this point takes many tries and even efforts to try. But the point being is that we see that it's not all or nothing. Judaism is not about all or nothing. Judaism is about keep trying and never give up. Lastly, Rabotai, we have Rabbeinu Yonah. In Yesod HaTshuva, he writes that a person should not refrain from the food that they enjoy because it's already enough to keep yourself away from the sins that the Torah itself forbids. But one thing that everyone can do, even the people that are watching for the first time, is in the middle of eating, while you're still a little hungry, not completely starving, not after one bite, but you're still hungry. You haven't completely satiated yourself. You have a little bit left. Stop and leave something over for the sake of HaShem. Now, of course, it's going to the garbage. It's going to somebody else going to eat it, whatever it is, but you're not going to eat it. Because that sense of control, even that one time or once in a while or once a day or once a week or however often you do it, where you don't completely satiate yourself, that already reminds your body what your soul wants, which is not to be so materialistic, not to be so lustful, not to be so connected to the material, the physical, to the point where you have to just satisfy yourself like a lion. In fact, Rabotai, that if a person does such a thing on a regular basis, where in the middle of a meal that they're enjoying, that they actually want to eat the whole thing, they stop before the end and leave some over. The Chida writes in its Tzipor and Shamir that this could be considered as if it's a fast. Obviously, you cannot do it on Yom Kippur or 17th of Tammuz or during the fast days, but for people that want to do tikkunim, for tikkun BEIT, tikkun of other sins that people are doing, you can actually consider stopping your meal short while you're still hungry and not eating the rest as a fast, says the Chida. Because offering your desire to HaShem as a form of tshuva for your sins, HaShem will consider this small act like a fast and as an act of atonement. And it'll be considered like a sacrifice. And your table will be an actual altar upon which you killed your evil inclination. So here, Rabotai, we see how beautiful it is that, yes, while we can learn the greatness of the tzaddikim and their actions, that perhaps some of us or all of us may never reach even 1% of it, there is still a place for every single person that has a desire to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And just like we said at the beginning of the shiur, as Rabbi Elimelech Milizhinsk said, that if somebody really cries out to HaShem, prays to HaShem to help him, to help me serve you, if you do it sincerely and regularly, eventually HaShem will help you. But it takes more than a few days. BeEzrat HaShem, this too will be another boost of spirituality, boost of chassidut, boost of truth to help each and every one of us serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu even better this week. Thank you again for learning with us. May HaKadosh Baruch Hu bless each and every one of you, especially those that are sharing this, learning from this, and supporting. For anyone that wants to donate and help us continue doing all the wonderful things that the organization is doing, you can donate at bhtorah.org, or BeEzratHashem.org. You could become a paid subscriber on YouTube and all types of other wonderful things. You could also send a check in the mail or send us a picture of a check. There's lots of ways to support. Either way, continue to learn, continue to grow, and BeEzrat Hashem will all continue to succeed in serving HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Kol tu b'chal v'atzlacha.